Hey everybody. I see Bjorn actually got in first. I see his high before Brian's first. So Bjorn's still holding the record. All right, so let's give it a few minutes. I'm a bit tired today, guys, a bit jet lagged. I was on a terrible flight yesterday for 10 hours, I think, in the middle seat, no leg room, crammed next to a guy with a 3-week-old baby. And I'm assuming it's his first because he had no idea what he's doing. I found myself cradling the baby's head a few times during the flight because it was just bopping around all over the place while the dude was sleeping, drooling on the seat. So nightmarish flight, and got in at like, I don't know, 1:30 in the morning, something like that. And yeah, so I'm a little slow to react today. Got jet lag, mind lagged. Just moving slow. It's just a slow day. All right. Let's give it a few minutes. Like I said, let people roll in, and then we'll get started. Oh, Jesus. Market makers. I was involved in a discussion, Bjorn, about market makers over the past few days. Yeah, the trolls are in early today. All right. So yeah, market makers. I think before Christmas, we will have market makers on the platform. The one that we've previously integrated with is most likely going to kick off right before Christmas, so next 2 weeks or so. And Parsec themselves are working with a separate market maker to market make their own token, which we may do some business with as well, depending on the final outcome of negotiations back and forth. What amount of XCM that you give as a bonus for someone buying 50K euros worth of equity? There was no official bonus given to anyone who bought equity. Some people who bought equity asked for tokens and thus bought tokens. Some, I don't think at some point we did offer some equity sales where there were tokens included in the equity sale, not as a bonus. Essentially, they were buying those tokens, but there was never any fixed amount. Yep, back in the office. Got home at about 1:30 in the morning yesterday. Today, actually, 1:30 in the morning today. I know you're not supposed to like address trolls, but sometimes it's just ridiculous. This guy's got the name Sammy Gravano, so I assume he's trying to act like he's Sammy the Bull Gravano. Anybody doesn't know about mafia lore, Sammy the Bull Gravano was one of the henchmen for the Gambino crime family back in late 80s, early 90s. So anyway, you got to put the bull in there. You can't just say Sammy Gravano. That's ridiculous. But it says, can you just hand over all the money you stole from me? Stole, spell STOLL. Oh, Jesus. Like, come on, man. You got to come better than that. That's ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that's how you spell, when you have like a mink stole, like a scarf. Anyway. All right, guys, I think we can get started. So for those of you who have never been here, never seen this, or wondering what the hell you're looking at, this is This Week in Crypto. I'm Kevin Murcko, CEO here at CoinMetro. It's the logo you see on my shirt and on the floor back here and in some of these memes behind me. We have a show we do every week. It's a little mix. Our agenda usually looks like this. First 10, 15 minutes or so, we cover market news. 10 pieces of market news that were curated over the last week by our elite Telegram group. Thank you guys and gals for that. I give a little opinion on each of the news stories. Takes about 10 to 15 minutes. We move on to Kevin Explains Crypto, where we have a term or a phrase that was voted on in the last week as well. And I pretty much explain what it means. Simple. Then we move on to a live Q&A here on YouTube. Questions will appear over here somewhere on this side of the screen. Usually, sometimes, maybe, definitely, most probably, most likely, 100%, we have some trolls usually that throw out some nonsense as well. So it can get interesting. And then Reddit questions. I see we only have one Reddit question this week, so that should be easy. We should be able to get to it. Moving on. So I'm going to start with market news and we'll go from there, guys. So if you could care less about market news, I'll see you in 10 minutes. If you like market news, next 10 minutes is for you. Number one on the list of 10, Malta may become challenging to crypto exchanges. And then I have in parentheses, due to forced resignation of Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. So we've talked about Malta a few times on this show. For those of you who have ever been on or heard me before, you know I don't really have a place in my heart for Malta. I always said that Malta's embracing of Binance and their embracing, especially of Binance, but of other crypto companies, was going to cause them issues. They were hit with some accusations of, let's say, lightened or thin AML policy a few months ago. The PM was actually going around shilling Binance for a while, saying how great it was that they were on the island and how they were promoting all their new crypto legislation. So that was bound to blow up in his face, and well, it has. Look, whether Malta wasn't challenging or not, Malta was a waste of time. If you got licensed in Malta, you were getting licensed to do business in Malta. Those licenses were not passportable across the European Union. And Malta as a whole has a very bad reputation when it comes to regulation. Case in point, what's happening right now. They were the place to go for gambling licenses back in the day, not anymore. They tried to be the place to go for FX licenses. That blew up in their face. And well, now we're starting to see this happen here as well. It's unfortunate, but anybody who knows the history of Malta when it comes to financial regulation saw this coming. So I would expect that since Malta is an EU country under the same EU directives as every other country, you're simply going to see the same type of rules and regulations and application of the same directives in Malta as you see anywhere else. And the 3 local licenses that they created or regulations that they created will simply be, useless. But that's what they are now. So no change. Number 2 on the list of 10, Huobi China joins blockchain service network to provide state-backed DLT solutions. So look, I think I made a prediction on this show a little over a year ago now, probably close to 2 years at this point, I guess, almost. When did we even start doing this thing? Jesus, it feels like it's been forever. But the first country to have a state-backed crypto is going to be a Commonwealth country. And obviously I was wrong. But Canada, I think, will be one of the first in the world, at least on that hemisphere, to do so. But point is that states are starting to see that blockchain can help them in a few ways, and not just with their own sovereign currencies, but also transparency, et cetera, automation. So, Huobi China, Huobi China has been around a long time. Blockchain Service Network, a lot of these organizations that are coming out, a lot of these organizations that are being built, no matter when they were built, this happens a lot in every industry. You get a lot of lobbying groups, a lot of organizations focusing on the same thing. At the end of the day, one of them is going to win out. Will it be the Blockchain Service Network? I have no idea. It's probably a bad name because at the end of the day, not all DLTs are blockchains, and blockchain is not a blanket term for DLT technology. So just by saying Blockchain Service Network is going to provide state-backed DLT solutions already kind of makes me giggle because it's a bit ridiculous. Maybe they should have called it Distributed Ledger Service Network. I don't know. But anyway, we'll see. It's good to see that states are starting to see the benefits of DLT solutions, because at the end of the day, if you're involved in this business one way, shape, or form, that's probably a good thing. Okay, sorry. Number 3 on the list of 10, DigiBytes getting delisted from Poloniex just hours after bashing Tron on Twitter. I didn't see this story actually. You know, I mean, I don't know how often DigiBytes bashes things on Twitter. This could simply be a coincidence. I don't know of a direct correlation between. Oh, actually, no, they bought Poloniex, didn't they? Yeah, well, direct correlation. Ding, 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 ding. Sorry, slow. It's been a slow day. Like I said, I'm a bit jet lagged, so give me a second to catch up on obvious things, even when I read them to myself. But yeah. So yeah, this. Well, look, guys. If you're getting listed on an exchange and it's owned by another company, and then you go and bash them in public. I mean, having said that, though, look, Poloniex should be run as a reputable business. Which means you can't just delist somebody or change an agreement based on the fact that you don't like what they said about you, unless you have a specific clause in your contract where they can't, where if they defame you or something like that, that you're allowed not to do business with them, which they may have. I don't know. I would say to DigiBytes, check your contract. Number 4 on the list of 10, China's internet firewall has blocked access to Etherscan. That took a while. Yeah, hey, China, by the way, it's 2019. There's these things called VPNs. Yeah, so your firewall is a waste of fucking time. Number 5 on a list of 10, backed CEO Kelly Lafleur, I'll call her Kelly L. How's that? Has blocked access. Oh, sorry, was appointed to a U.S. Senate seat. This is funny because she's appointed. Normally senators are voted in. But in some certain circumstances where a senator can no longer fulfill their duties, or I don't know, get caught with a bunch of photos of underage girls, or I don't know, paying prostitutes in bathrooms. I don't know what happened in this particular situation. I'm not saying that was it. But I guess it's good that we have a pro-crypto person in the Senate. One. Well, maybe there's 2 now. Maybe the hell there might even be 3. So that's good. But there's a little bit of conflict interest starts to float around this woman, I think, a little bit. Her husband is, I believe, either the CEO or the owner of the New York Stock Exchange. And then, she's the one that's going to provide price discovery back to that same institution on Bitcoin. Anyway, there's a lot of weirdness going on there. But anyway, having somebody in government that's pro-crypto, pro-blockchain, pro-DLT, not a bad thing at the end of the day. Number 6 on a list of 10, 70 cryptocurrency hedge funds have closed so far this year. Investors weary of Bitcoin. It's not that investors are weary of Bitcoin. See, the problem is cryptocurrency hedge fund. You know what that means? That means some asshole named Bob who bought some cryptocurrency and sold it to his friends. So the problem is that in an unregulated environment, which most of these are, they simply just bought Bitcoin and held it. And then Bitcoin crashed. People got out on the lows because you know what retail investors do? They sell on lows and buy on highs. They're really good at it. So if you need an indicator, guys, to trade from, I call it the retail trader. When people start to talk about buying things, start to sell. And when you go on CNBC Squawk Box and some idiots up there telling that you should be buying Bitcoin, sell it. When they say you should be selling it, get ready to buy it. I call that the reverse retail indicator. So it's not that 70, great hedge funds that were doing well or that they knew what they were doing have crashed and burned. These are 70 hedge funds that had absolutely no strategy, that aren't hedge funds by any definition, shape, or form that anybody in finance would ever agree to. This is just 70 small little firms that decided, let's get on this bandwagon that looks like we're going to become billionaires, and they screwed up and lost. I would say over the last few years, I think hundreds have probably gone bankrupt. Investors should be weary of Bitcoin. It's a volatile asset that has absolutely no evidence that it'll be here tomorrow. Now, don't take that the wrong way, especially those Bitcoin maximalists out there that might be listening to me. I like Bitcoin. I like the technology. I like the fact that I'm in the business I'm in. But don't ever question the fact that if Bitcoin can be around, if it can just go away, because it could. It 100% could go to zero tomorrow. So investors should be weary. Just because you're weary doesn't mean you don't invest. Most professional investors will have a piece of their portfolio in very high risk investments, a very small piece, but very high risk investments that they may be weary of. So being weary of something doesn't really mean anything. Number 7, Circle warns Poloniex U.S. customer assets may be sent to the government. Those in dormant accounts may be sent to state governments consistent with relevant regulations for abandoned property. Yep. Well, do business in the U.S. Do business with a U.S. Firm that's owned by a very highly regulated firm. Expect to be, have to follow all pertinent regulations. But look, if you have dormant accounts that you haven't paid attention to, well, so what? I mean, same thing happens in your bank account, and then you have to go to the government, or, you know, there actually are companies, legitimate companies in the US that will find, they called it found money that was basically taken in dormant accounts, insurance policies, et cetera, over the years and allocated somewhere in your name. So, I mean, first of all, who are they warning? Because if somebody hasn't used their account long enough for that the Abandoned Property Act to take place, they probably don't care. So I don't know who they're warning. It's kind of like sending a warning signal up to a bunch of deaf people. You know, I mean, they're not paying attention anyway. Number 8 on the list 10, EU won't let stablecoins enter market until risks are addressed. I wanted to read this one actually, but when I went to go click on the link, let's see, maybe it's just me. No, yeah, it's the wrong story on the link, guys. Somebody gave me the wrong link. Anyway, so I don't know how broad this story means EU won't, because there are stable coins in the EU, that's for sure. And it's almost impossible to stop their usage. However, if we're talking about the EU Central Bank, ECB, well, they can make statements all they want about not allowing stable coins. I think, to be honest, the term stable coin just doesn't make any sense. They're not stable, right? Smart tokens, which is what you call something that's pegged to an asset, an underlying asset, is actually more stable. Having said that, I think that they are examining, you know, like the EU usually does, they're examining risks that are there, and they're putting way too much weight on those risks, right? They're looking at how volatile a stable coin may be, rather than looking at how they can actually make the market more stable by getting in more liquidity into that market, by actually regulating the market as it should be regulated, so that institutions and other large players can come in and get into this market to stabilize it. Instead, they're looking at the risks of a illiquid asset that it has in an unregulated market. Well, that's halfway their fault. And the other half is from the legislators. They need to push legislators to make legislation that they can then put into effect so that they don't have these problems. Moving on, number 9, on the list of 10, Microsoft announces token collectibles on Ethereum blockchain partnership with Engine. We talked about this a few weeks ago, actually, maybe it was last week. I don't know, again, tired, jet lag. But in terms of collectibles, look, it's going to happen. Collectibles make sense. Why does it make sense? Well, I have an 8-year-old daughter, right? I have a 24-year-old, 22, and an 8-year-old daughter, right? When the 24 and the 22-year-old were younger, they didn't have tablets or cell phones or any nonsense like that. And of course, I didn't have those when I was growing up either. But what they did do, though, was they had, you know, things that they collected, whatever they were, whether they were cards or you know, Pokemon cards, or whether they were, you know, these what the hell do they call these little chip things they used to, like, whatever the hell they were called. You know, they collected stuff, right? Just like when I was a kid, kids collected baseball cards and garbage pail kids. I mentioned those on the show for sure. Remember that. So digitalized collectibles, you know, now all my daughter wants to do is buy sapphires and diamonds and I don't know what nonsense on some game so she can buy some useless, you know, digital artifact. And so putting these things on the blockchain, non-fungible tokens, all this is going to happen. Whether you like it or not is meaningless. Whether I'm going to use it or not, which I probably won't, is meaningless, but people will use it for sure. So I think Microsoft's probably making a good play here for the medium to long term. And even if, you know, physical collectibles still exist, authenticity of physical collectibles has always been a problem, right? Ask O.J. Simpson about that when he went to go, you know, steal back his trophy and then went to jail for like 12 years or something, right? Maybe he stole back something that wasn't even authentic. Haha, joke's on you, O.J. 12 years in jail for nothing. But, you know, so the authenticity of these things has always been in question because, you know, you'd get some authenticity certificate that was signed by some, you know, jackass who said that it was authentic. So if those things go on the blockchain from when the collectible is actually created, well, guess what? Now you actually have a true certificate of authentication that comes from the actual producer of that memorabilia or from the person signing the memorabilia at the time of signature. So even those type of things are going to be something that blockchain is going to be used for. So way to go on Microsoft on that. I think it makes sense. And it's probably going to be a huge business in the future. Number 10 on the list of 10, US arrests Ethereum developer for training North Koreans to evade sanctions. This one's awesome. And it's awesome because I don't know how stupid this guy is. And I don't know if he's listening or anybody that thinks, I don't know. You can think what you want about this, but this guy went to North Korea, and I was actually invited to the same event, and I didn't go because I didn't feel like going to prison. A couple other colleagues of mine were invited as well, didn't go. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they didn't go because they wanted, I don't know what their reason was for not going, but I didn't go because having a North Korean stamp on my passport, I thought really simply just meant I'm going to jail, especially as being a U.S. citizen. So anyway, this guy went and the title of his presentation, and this isn't verbatim, but the title of his presentation essentially was how to evade sanctions using Ethereum. And I guess he assumed that no one was going to have a cell phone or make a picture or tweet anything in North Korea. Well, they did. And obviously, going to any country, never mind North Korea, that's sanctioned, even if it's not a sanctioned country and there just has to be people in the room listening and telling people how to evade US and OFAC sanctions using a piece of technology is illegal. And it's pretty obvious that that's illegal. Somebody asking if Vitalik was defending the guy. You know, Vitalik might have his own thoughts. I've met Vitalik a few times. Obviously, he's a unique person. He's also a young guy. Look, what I always say all the time, no matter if you're a genius, an idiot, or whatever, there's one thing an old idiot has that a young genius doesn't. And that's that the old idiot was young once. So the one thing he understands is what you do when you're young and the type of mentality you have when you're young. Doesn't matter how smart you are, mentality changes over time. Trust me, the same way you look at life when you're 20 is not the same way you look at life when you're 70. 100% different. So I understand, because I was young once too. I was Vitalik's age. I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I would have defended the guy too. Like, governments, that's ridiculous. Freedom of speech, bro. It's in the Constitution. I would have said some horse shit like that, right? But it's horse shit. Because at the end of the day, yes, there's freedom of speech, but you can't go into a theater and yell fire because people could injure themselves or die or whatever trying to get out. That's illegal. And it's the same thing that, yes, it's illegal. Free speech is legal. But if you write a manual on how to make a bomb, strap it to your chest, and walk into a kindergarten and blow kids up, you're probably going to go to jail. In the same light that if you go to a country that is sanctioned, and sanctioned for good reason, they build nuclear weapons, supposedly. So the sanction is supposedly for a good reason. Right? They build nuclear weapons that they can use against other people, supposedly. And even if they didn't do that, the people in their country have to eat themselves. There's literally cannibalism in the country because there's not enough food, right? So think what you want about the nuclear weapons. You're going to the country to explain to them how they can evade sanctions and bring more money in for the government so they can continue to basically kill people and create weapons of mass destruction. How is that a good thing? I mean, regardless of what side of the, debate you're on about whether or not there should be sanctions in a country. Yeah, Virgin. Okay, moving on, guys. Kevin explains crypto. Let's knock that one out. So Kevin explains crypto. This week's phrase is vanity address. So this one's pretty easy to explain. When you open a crypto wallet, you get an address, right? And that address is complete and utter nonsense. Forget about your grandmother not being able to recognize an address. Pretty much no one is going to remember what their wallet address is. It's a lot of characters. Some are uppercase, some are lowercase. That usually doesn't matter. Anyway, there are letters, there are numbers. It's monstrous. You're never going to remember it, right? So vanity address is a way to add some recognizable characters to that address and to brand it, let's say. For example, instead of just having random numbers in an address, maybe the first address of your public key, your wallet, would essentially be CoinMetro, for example, so that people would recognize that as a CoinMetro address, or maybe your initials, or maybe the street address you grew up on, whatever. It's an address that has some type of customization in terms of the actual private key or the public key, sorry. And that's it. Same thing happens with like vanity license plates, right? You want something different, you want to customize, they call them vanity plates. Well, these are vanity addresses. So before we jump into live Q&A, since we only have one question on Reddit, I'm just going to answer it. So someone asking, can you implement a warning that ETH is transferred by contract until you switch to direct transfers? You can see main chat. So I know why that's probably important, because most or many, maybe it is most, other exchanges say that they don't take contract address transfers. They say because, well, simply we don't, the money's lost, which is horseshit. Let's just clear that up right away. That money is definitely with the destination company, exchange, whatever. Their automated systems do not see the money on the blockchain. They don't see the transfer because contract addresses on main chain show up as 0. And you actually have to dig into the contract to find out the value of what was transferred. But it was transferred. If they tell you they didn't receive it, they are lying to you and they're stealing your money. point blank. They can give you any excuse they want in the book. They can tell you that it's not true. Whatever excuse they want to give is a lie. It's a blatant lie, and they stole your money. But we have looked at this internally, and yes, we're looking at providing some warnings, and also we are looking to migrate over to our own Ether wallets instead of using BitGo, so that we can mitigate this problem 100%. I would say it's not a problem with us. We're the solution. The problem are all the other exchanges that are too lazy and too incompetent to implement a solution where they can track contract address deposits. That's it. So we're going to, quote unquote, fix this. Basically, we're going to revert to what everybody else does at some point, because no one else is doing what they should be doing, which is kind of sorry to say, actually. But to be honest, that's kind of a perfect kind of description of what this market is, right? Sometimes to move forward in this industry, you have to do what everybody else does, even though it sucks, because trying to do something different that might actually be a better solution, well, no one else does it. So you look like you're culpable. Okay, let's move on to, let's say, live questions here. Let's say, do I have any big news for today? Well, we'll see. I'm telling you guys, I'm super jet lagged. I probably did have something I wanted to mention. It might pop into my head though at some point, so I'll just keep going. Maybe one of these questions will knock it loose. Liking the logo, almost as good as mine, from Spike and Mike's Life Insurance. Spike and Mike's, isn't that a candy? No, it's Mike and Ike's. Yeah, I hated those when I was a kid. I remember kids used to bring those, like kids, like, trading candy or whatever at school. Nah, Mike and Ike's, disgusting. Anyway, I guess your logo is pretty cool, so hats off. What's up, Krispy Kreme? Yes, expose those Chinese and their outdated methods. Now we got John Gotti. So we had Sammy the Bull Gravano, and now we got his boss, John Gotti. By the way, Sammy the Bull actually was one of the reasons John Gotti ended up going to jail, because he turned on him. So they probably wouldn't be in the same chat together. But John Gotti's dead anyway, so I guess he's from the grave. So that's cool. Actually, Sammy the Bull might be dead too. I don't remember. What's the general plan to attract traders with so many exchanges around? Well, I love when people make this question, because I've gotten this question in so many different businesses throughout my career, whether it's from investors or whether it's just from the general public. First of all, there aren't that many exchanges. Even if you think that some of those numbers out there are real, I've heard hundreds. I've even heard 1,500 exchanges, which I don't think is accurate. It depends on how you define an exchange, to be quite honest. But I would say there are probably 150 active exchanges, 200 maybe active exchanges in the world. Active meaning that something's happening on their platform. So 200. That's just about the amount of countries that exist in the world, right? More or less the same number. Obviously, some of those countries are the size of, the head of a pin or a needle. But that's more or less it, right? The population of the world, what are we, like 8 billion now or something like that? 200 exchanges to control let's say the amount of assets that can actually be tokenized, which we're talking about every market known to man, plus some additional for SMEs and property and all these things that currently aren't really packaged into any type of tradable asset. And 200 is nothing. Consider the fact as well that the vast majority of those, 99%, will not get licensing to do anything that I just described. So how do you get clients? Well, if we look at the product suite we already have, even though internally we're quite nitpicky on things that we still think we need to achieve, on things that we think needs to be redesigned, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we compare the product suite we have now with the product suite of any of our competitors. I would say we're either, in some cases, we're better. In some cases, we're about the same. And in a very small amount of cases, they may have something that we don't. But on average, if you take the overall mean of all these 200, we're at the level or better. So the only thing we haven't done that they have done is marketing. Obviously, you have timing and other things at play. Okay, great. But client acquisition, we haven't focused on client acquisition, right? We're really only competing with a small section of those maybe 200 exchanges when it comes to actual client acquisition. We're also able to acquire clients in different segments because we have things like Tram that'll be released soon. I haven't said it in a while, so I figured I'd throw it up. So we have things like Tram where we can cross-sell clients that don't know how to trade. We have, obviously we have margin. We have, you can short positions. If everybody says, well, hopefully you guys can time your client acquisition to the next, bull run. Who gives a shit about a bull run? I mean, to be honest, Bitcoin could go to 14 cents tomorrow, and I would be just as happy as if it went to 500K. You want to know why? Because from a business standpoint, a lot of people would be selling. And if you're going to sell and you're making a loss, you want to find the cheapest possible place to sell that's reliable. So a licensed exchange with some of the cheapest fees on the planet would probably be a good place to go, which would mean volume. So at the end of the day, it's not, I don't worry about, how you're going to get clients. It's not hard to get clients, but you need a budget and you need marketing. And if you have no budget and no marketing, it's very difficult to get clients, which we've done that. We've still gotten clients. We've still grown. But now that we will have a budget, and now that we're going to pool more resources into marketing, it's simply about fine-tuning that budget, finding the customer acquisition cost that makes sense, fine-tuning that, getting the right ROI, and then churning it. That's it. That's how you get clients. Not worried about it, to be quite honest. What's with the hard part of that is creating the content. And the plan, everybody uses the same plan. Look, there's not many things you can do in market. Yeah, you can have some quote unquote out of the box ideas. You can send some, I don't know, crazy people to run around naked in London screaming CoinMetro with, tattoos on their chests, whatever. You can do some nonsense. But at the end of the day, marketing is marketing. And marketing today is, social media and internet. That's it. It's just about finding the acquisition cost that makes sense, finding out how to get that acquisition cost, and then you push out, in mass. Yeah, the contrarian indicator. Yeah, well, the contrarian indicator, Tommy, is actually, you got to go a little deeper than just always going against the retail guys. It's specific times when you need to go, when basically you're comparing volume, comparing retail side volume with fundamentals. And when retail and fundamentals match, meaning fundamentals in terms of, CNBC is saying buy, 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 and there's a huge influx in buying, you should be selling. So it's not 100% contrarian, because retail traders aren't always wrong. They just can't make risk management decisions. They can be right 99% of the time, but the one time they're wrong out of the 100, they will lose all their money. So you want to get on the contrarian side on that 1%, not on the other 99. Wasn't Vitalik defending the guy? Yeah, I already went on that. What will your focus be that funds are secured? Well, I think we mentioned this. Marketing. So client acquisition is the main focus. Client acquisition leading to self-sustainability is our main focus. Obviously, within that, there are focuses about fine-tuning product, getting the rest of our products launched. Licensing is a focus. However, with the current funds we have under our possession, it's not a possibility, unfortunately. While obviously the Montenegro sandbox license is something we will still go after. I think Mexico we're still going to look at as well in terms of licensing, because we can do it relatively inexpensively, and I think it can broaden our. We already have employees in Mexico, so it makes sense, I think, to explore there. There's only really one exchange that does any business called Bitso. They are not licensed in Mexico. They're licensed in Gibraltar. They're very expensive. I think we have a good shot at using connections that I have in the country, as well as just an understanding of how businesses operate in the country and who and what and where and how to get it done. I think it makes sense. But in terms of MTF and things like that, those things are going to have to be held off until we get another influx of cash. And self-sustainability is going to help us do that. So goal right now is user acquisition, self-sustainability. Obviously, we're going to be fine-tuning product. We're going to be building out as we grow compliance, support teams, as well as marketing is going to be the first thing we build out. And we're going to be focusing on some fine-tuning of current product as well. Based inner boomer Kevin giving the youngsters a lesson. Yeah, I'm not a boomer. I don't know how this became like a thing on social media. I mean, I got to tell you guys, social media is like acid for the brain. And I don't mean like the good acid that you take and you trip. I mean like straight like acid you use to clean hard water off your toilet. It literally kills your brain, right? Like, I'm not a boomer. I'm not even close to being a boomer, actually. When boomers were born, right? They were born after World War II. All the soldiers came home and hadn't had sex with women for, well, maybe, I don't know, some did, for, upwards of 2 years. And they all came home, had a bunch of sex, and had kids. That means you were born between 1942 and like 1946. Not me, bro. I wasn't born. My parents weren't even born in 1946. So not a boomer. Anyway, yeah. Social media guys, seriously, like open a book once in a while, like fucking read something that isn't somebody's tweet, like learn something, please. Will we get new currencies this month? Probably not. I'll tell you why. One of the main provider behind these currencies is actually expanding their banking reach. So they have 2 or 3 banks that they're approaching. Well, not approaching. They're in the process of expanding their reach so that they can support more of these currencies, but more importantly, so that they can automate everything. The current bank is having a hard time getting their APIs automated. So actually, one of those banks is LHV that they're courting, and we're in the process of helping them get a meeting so they can move it along a bit faster. So this month, probably not, mainly because it's December, and in about 2 weeks max, no one's going to be working. And in the week previous to the week they stop working, no one's going to be working at full steam. So basically, it's maybe next week, more or less, you have people working as normal. The week after that is just people just show up to work, stare at a wall, and think about how much money they spend on presents for people they don't like. And all the shitty parties they have to go to at their relatives' houses and drink eggnog and like listen to Uncle Jerry talk about some nonsense that they heard 15,000 times. So nobody does anything, right? Productivity goes through the floor. So no, I don't expect it to happen in December. Any news on LHV? Nope. Though now that I'm back in my seat, I didn't get it done today because, well, jet lag. But on Monday, I will be pestering LHV. So hopefully next week we'll have some updates from them. What news for MAP? That's an Oliver question. Like I said, I'm not answering that one. I let Oliver. Oliver has fun with the MAP questions. Roger Johnson, you mentioned staking is similar to collective investment schemes and staking tokens may face new regulations. What do you think is the probable outcome? That's a hard one to say because it really, the term staking is used very broadly. So some programs that use staking are I would say are definitely collective investment schemes. However, some aren't, but it's a gray area for me. So probable outcome, if they are collective investment schemes, is simply that the issuer would need to be licensed in order to allow their token to be staked, and any company allowing the staking would also need to be licensed. 2 different licenses, but they would both sides would need to be licensed. And if you think about that, in the financial industry, if you hold an asset and you make money by holding that asset, you probably purchased it from someone that was licensed, right? I mean, I understand the pushback from licensing. Licensing is a pain in the ass. It's the old system, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, you don't get a new system until you change the old system. And the old system hasn't changed yet. So change in an old system takes time, right? Especially a system the regulatory system is rooted in trust. That's essentially the basis for regulation is trust. You go through a process so you can trust an individual or a business. You license them because you feel they are trustworthy. And the people that go to that business feel that they're trustworthy because they're licensed. Now, obviously, we all know that in practice, that shit doesn't work out too well. But you're now trying to instill trustless systems into a system built on trust. So, spread that around your head for a while. And not that easy to come up with a solution. John Gotti. All right, yeah, so he's saying he's dead. Okay. Roger asking, did we resume communication with the Chainlink team? Actually, they just got back in touch with us. I think next week we're going to have a call. Are you following Richard Hart and his Hex ERC20? Might be an idea to debate him, traction marketing. Fergus, hey, yeah, I actually met Richard for the first time here in Talon. I had a few great conversations with him. I thought he was a pretty insightful guy. I have nothing to say about his Hex project. I saw the debate with Tone Vase. It was hilarious. I don't know who everybody here thinks won, but I think Richard Hart mopped the floor with them a few times. I think Tone was completely out of his depth. He couldn't even, I don't think he won one specific, look, Richard's a smart guy, right? And when I say smart, I mean, he's smart, period. I think he can probably debate someone on any topic he wants, and he'd probably come out the winner in most of those. However, I think I have some of those qualities as well. So I think it would be an interesting debate. I think it would be funny for sure. We had a bit of a back and forth on one of the panel discussions, which I think is on YouTube from Talon in the Crypto Fin conference. So you guys can look at that. We were generally in agreement, but we had a little bit of a back and forth on the panel. Yeah, look, I invited actually Richard to the next Futurama event in Tulum in January, mid-January. So maybe we'll get to have a chat there. I would definitely be down for a friendly debate with Richard if he's down to have a friendly debate with me. I think we both have fun. We'd probably get a few laughs out of it. And, you know, why not some marketing? Will the CSD be ready in January? Coding of the MVP, yeah, we'll be ready by the end of January. I'm available in London to do that. Hey, Ginger, I don't know what you're referring to because I'm a little late on these questions. So if you want to let me know, then I'll come back on that. Running naked through London. Okay. Yeah, all right. We'll be in touch. So now we got a guy named California Crook saying that we paid him to put us in front of magazine headlines. In front of magazine headlines. So the headline was on the magazine and we were in front of that. So, Jesus. And he wrote a story and now we're supposed to pay up. But his name is California Crook. So anyway, saying that you're not a boomer is such a boomer thing to say. Well, I'm not a boomer, guys. I mean, shit. You guys got to start. Can people seriously, like in Twitterverse and shit, actually use terms that, you know, can you guys gonna understand what they mean before you use them? It's just me asking, you know, just me. Like in crypto, how many acronyms? If I hear one, like say OTC, if I hear one more guy say OTC, I swear to God, there's gonna be such a meme fest after that. You know, the whole market's OTC, guys. Over the counter trading, right? That means there's no centralized market. That literally is the entire market. Anyway, it has nothing to do with boomers, but okay. I noted IOTA. I ask every Friday to the day you got in your platform. I don't like the other exchanges. Please, I am very sad. IOTA. Okay. Well, look, we have a list right now that's going around for the next submission to LHV before they get this self checklist nonsense done. So just for you, Mr. Stoney, I'm going to ask IOTA to be included. Okay. And we'll probably submit that hopefully right before the holidays. So I'll let you know. Ask me next week. How many tram managers are available at launch? No idea, actually. I know we had 2 that have signed up, but I don't know if they're going to be ready at launch. Good morning. Morning to you. Okay, so this message was blocked. I'm going to show it just because Spike and Mike's Life Insurance asking if someone can get this crackhead California Crook off the feed. So there you go. Yankee Tough Guy, I'm aware you're a part of the 3% of people who actually never grew into a feel human. You're basically a gorilla. Okay, all right, moving on. You must be a man. Jesus. Yo, Kevin, not sure if you talked about it already, but who's the source of the funding? The Brazilian group? Nope, not the Brazilian group. Actually, a group based in the U.S. 2 groups based in the U.S. actually. So the Brazilian group, nope, we never, as of today, haven't. Well, we got a signature on an agreement. I think it was an MOU, but no, we haven't finalized that one yet. If you own a house, then you're a boomer. I don't own a house. So. Actually, I think home ownership is probably one of the biggest scams of the 19th and 20th centuries. But you know, boomers will definitely fight you on that one. That's for sure. I won't be fighting. It's a ridiculous waste of money in most, unless you're a really good real estate speculator, or you don't plan well enough to actually have an income when you're older, which is why boomers think it's a great idea, because this way they can retire on no money. At least that's what they thought. And then, you know, inflation kicked in, shit got more expensive, and their house didn't grow with inflation. And now the maintenance costs on their old ass house is more money than they get from Social Security, so they can't pay. So yeah. Probably could have took that money and put it in a savings account there and actually had more money and cash to your name, or put it into some semi-speculative investments and done much better than your house. Is tram ready? For all intensive purposes, yes, it's pretty much ready. It's been ready for about a month, at least in its current state on our sandbox. Testing has been a bit slow, though testing is starting to pick up again. I think that, anyway, we're on track. I think Oliver mentioned a date. I think he said the 12th or something like that was a date that they expected it to go live, 11th or 12th. That's me speculating off the top of my head, but I think that's what he said. So yeah, testing is still underway, but it's relatively done. They're very small little bug fixes, and mostly not even bug fixes, UI, UX fixes that are going on right now. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on synthetics? Is that synthetics as a proper noun? Is that a business? Or like, are we talking about synthetics as in synthetic tradable securities, or okay, decentralized synthetic assets? Okay, let's never heard of these guys actually. Okay, so let's see, how does it work? Trades are executed on an order book, all distributed pool tokens. Okay, get reported. All right, so on the face of it, so they're saying they're making synthetic links, synthetic pegs to gold, Bitcoin, US dollars, and shares, that you can long or short these things, that there's no liquidity restraints, that they are executed without an order book. Executed without an order book, no liquidity limitations. Those two things do not fit together. It's asinine. So I don't know what to say about them, all in the fact that whoever wrote these three things right on their main page, infinite liquidity, peer-to-peer contract trading, is a moron or a scam artist, one or the other. Hopefully he's just a moron, but that is impossible, because there's a finite amount of people in the world. Do we agree? Then there can't be infinite liquidity between a finite amount of people. Anyway, moving on. Thanks. So there are not many exchanges. It's a German company. Now I have a few questions. How much volume do you expect from Tram in the first couple of months? I don't expect volumes. I mean, I have no expectations of volume. Our focus right now is going to be on user acquisition, and I think Tram will help us bring in users, because Tram will help us bring in people that aren't traders, that are simply in passive investors. And almost anybody can be a passive investor, whereas a very small population of the world can be a trader. What's the story with the recent price drop in XCM? Any breach of TC? Yep, there was a breach of our terms and conditions. There will be a post about it at some point, either today, over the weekend, or on Monday. But yeah, there was a breach of terms and conditions, and we're going to write all those wrongs and give some details on what happened, why it happened, and yeah, but yes, definitely a breach of terms and conditions. Okay, Fergus, cool. Let Richard know I said hi. Actually, I reached out to him recently. He said he was busy with his launch, so I left him alone. The Red Diablo, you seem to be a big mobster fan. Did you happen to see the Irishman movie based on the life of Jimmy Hoffa and his speculated death? I actually tried to watch it over the course. It's like 3.5 hours long. I'm not a big mobster fan, but I grew up in a time when, all these guys were in the news all the time. It's kind of like Trump. You may not like Trump, but if you're a kid right now, if you're 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, whatever, in 30 years from now, you will know everything there is to know about Donald Trump that was in the media. Why? Because he's in the media every day. You can't escape it. So yeah, not that I was a mobster fan, but I have seen most of those movies too. Why? Because mobster movies were the thing to do, late 80s, early 90s. During the RICO trials and everything. So, but I did try to watch it. To be honest, I didn't really like it. I think I don't think the acting was all that great. To be honest, I think the script was kind of shitty. It lost my attention a few times. I think the story of Jimmy Hoffa isn't all that interesting, to be honest. He's obviously dead. I think the story they give makes a bit of sense. It's one of the options. Yep, no such thing as an infinite substance of physicality. Yeah, well, I mean, to break it down into the easiest terms possible, a peer-to-peer network, which obviously doesn't start off as a large network. So you're talking about a peer-to-peer network, and then mixing that in with the term infinite liquidity makes no sense. There is no infinite liquidity in any market. There can be sufficient liquidity. There's no such thing as infinite liquidity. But if you have market makers that have a certain flexibility on how they can actually offer liquidity to a market, you can have sustainable liquidity. You can have liquidity that can be sustained throughout any type of market movement or most market movements. In black swan events, you're not going to have any liquidity. That's for sure. It doesn't matter how it's controlled. But when it's peer-to-peer and you don't control the minimums, you're not controlling the minimums that can be provided in liquidity, and you're trying to do it over a decentralized network where people can pull liquidity probably at free will. Yeah, well, doesn't work. Not with today's technology. When will XCM be used as collateral in TRAM? When XCM will be used as a collateral in TRAM, would you give any time frame? Well, XCM is going to be required to buy a ticket into TRAM, so there will be XCM involved. As far as collateral, I think we made a decision that a certain percentage or a maximum of collateral could be allowed using XCM. But to be honest, I haven't been inside of those talks now for probably close to 45, 60 days because was involved mostly in fundraising. And now, while I was in Mexico, I had some business development going on and a few other things. So I think we will allow it if we don't allow it at the launch, we will allow it at some point, but we will scale it. So, which means you'll be allowed to probably place a certain amount of collateral in XCM. And then over time, as XCM gets more liquid, that'll change, just like on margin trading, for example. Are there any YouTube margin high-profile traders that you'd like to see promote TRAM-like product? I don't even know of one influential trader on YouTube. Would I like influencers to support TRAM? Of course. Do I know of any specifically? Nope, have no idea. I've seen a few guys talk about being traders on YouTube, and in between my laughs and almost passing out from crying, I didn't really hear anything that they had to say. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there are a few guys that know what they're doing, but I have no idea who they are. But I would definitely be open to chatting with them about the possibility of doing some type of cross promotion for sure. Yeah, it definitely dragged for sure. And everybody's too old, man. Plus, it makes me feel old because I'm looking at these guys that, I remember them in their heyday, and now they look like they're like one step away from the grave. How close are we to a global recession, and how will it play out in your opinion? Look, recessions are cyclical. So global recessions, you say localized recessions once every 10 to 20 years, depending on the country. Sometimes it can be shorter, especially if you're in a country that's prone to recessions, 5 years even. But 10 to 20 years is usually more or less accurate. Now that we have a globalized world, that means when one major country goes into recession, US, China, Russia, the rest of the world will follow. So especially when your main economic power, which continues to be the United States of America, goes into recession, the rest of the world will follow. It just depends on to what level they follow. So the next global recession, in my mind, is going to happen around consumer credit. We saw the mortgage credit crisis. That mortgage credit crisis was nonsense compared to what the consumer credit crisis will be. You can look at the numbers. That I think the average American has something like $6,000 to $7,000 in credit card debt. That's average, but trust me, that's not the mean. There's massive amounts of consumer debt that are rising in interest rates that eventually is going to blow. And when that blows, it's going to be much larger than your mortgage bubble. And it may lead to another mortgage bubble, to be quite honest, especially people that have taken out second and third mortgages to pay off credit card debt. So when's that going to happen? Well, look, everybody likes to pinpoint dates. And then if they're right because they threw the dart at the right side of the dartboard, they make it seem like they absolutely knew what they were talking about. What I can tell you is these things are always cyclical. When one ends, the next one has already started. So when the mortgage crisis kind of came to end in 2009, 2010, the next one already started. We're now going into 2020. That's 10 years. I would say we have at least probably 3 to 5 years before we get to a point where we probably are going to see the beginning of the next global recession or localized US recession. And then off of those 3 to 5 years, it may take 3 to 5 more years for people to actually know that there's a recession. Depends on what kind of recession it is. So I don't think it's going to be, tomorrow, the next day, next year, but it's definitely going to happen. That's the way inflationary economies work. Remember, though, that everybody that talks about this deflationary currency being the best thing since sliced bread, there's a boomer comment for you, by the way. Inflationary currencies are very, very good during times of crisis because they're very easy to offset crisis. Deflationary currencies suck during times of crisis. So keep that in mind when you have all your money in a deflationary currency and crisis hits the fan. Big time global economic crisis, and you have your money sitting in a deflationary currency. Good luck with that one. Where did you grow up? I grew up in Northeast US. Yeah. What do you think will happen to China in a recession, seeing how leveraged they are? Well, everybody's leveraged. So China still manipulates their economy a lot. Their GDP on paper is nowhere near what their real GDP is. They overinflate everything. So they can underinflate a crisis just like they can overinflate, average numbers. So I think to the people of China is one thing. To the actual what everybody thinks outside of China is the perception, nothing. And perception is a big game when it comes to recessions. Because as soon as somebody knows that the U.S. is in recession, then you get the people that think they're not going to be able to pay the debt. And when they think they can't pay the debt, they start restricting access to debt. Access to debt is restricted, and then you start to see a restricting of the U.S. economy, which is mostly housing. And then when housing gets restricted, then you start to see the loss of jobs, and the loss of jobs gets restricted. So anyway, it's a domino effect. So I think China has a decent way of protecting themselves in terms of how they can manipulate the numbers basically. But China's starting to get a big middle class. A lot of countries that were emerging over the last couple of decades are starting to now have a massive middle class. India, China, even countries like Mexico and other countries in South America, Brazil, are starting to see an expanding middle class. Expanding middle class is great for many things, like house buying, which is a major, major chunk of the global economy. But you know what else middle class people do? They take on debt. So the bigger the middle class goes, the bigger debt bubble. The bigger the debt bubble, the bigger the burst, the bigger the burst, the bigger the recession. Yep, 10K minimum XCM buy-in for Tram. That's true. That's from the manager side, I think. All right, guys. Any other questions? We actually just right at like one hour in, so that was pretty good timing. Didn't think I was going to make it, to be quite honest. It's a long day. Now that you've secured the funds, will you stay for a while in town, or will you still be traveling? I'll still be traveling. In January, I'll be back in Mexico for this event in Tulum. Before that, I'll be in Malaysia for what should be the biggest event in crypto history. 15,000 people expected in Malaysia, Chain 2020. Look it up. And then to Tulum, Mexico for, what is this, January 17th to the 20th for something, part of the Futurama series. And then after that, I don't know. So, business development is going to require some travel. If we hire somebody that can do business development, then I won't need to travel so much. But traveling, look, we still need to raise funds, guys. Yep, we have funds. Yep, we're going to reach self-sustainability. That's the goal. We're still going to need money for licensing. We're still going to need, but self-sustainability means we can bring on cheap debt as well, which also means that we don't have such a need to raise capital. But we still have a need to raise capital now. So it's still something that's, that's on our minds. We just don't have, it's just not our first need today, as it has been for the past months. Do I plan to go to Tokyo anytime soon? Not on my agenda, though. For the CSD, we do have a connection in Japan that seems like they're quite interested in helping us offer something in Japan. I also have some personal business dealings in Japan with one of our other shareholders. So there might be a reason for me to head up to northern Japan in the next months, maybe early next year. I don't know. Yep, still planning on going back to Pakistan in Q1. We'll see how that pans out. Obviously, those plans can change, but right now that's still on the books. Is XCM a good hedge against hyperinflation? No, it's not. There's better hedges. Actually, I can't say it's not. What I would say is I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows if any of these things are actually a good hedge for hyperinflation, because even though they're classified as a deflationary currency or a deflationary asset, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good place to have your money when you see hyperinflation. because it also means that, you know, as if the world went into hyperinflation and everybody put assets into deflationary assets, then there would be no one, you know, when someone went to sell that asset, now you have a concentration of buyers and sellers. You may get into a point where you have an unbalanced market. There's other reasons as well that we could talk about for a long time on the show, but is XCM a better, I don't know, hedge at hyperinflation than keeping your money in an Argentine peso? Yeah, probably. Probably, yeah. But in terms of just global hyperinflation, it's an illiquid asset, guys. And so is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is illiquid. It is not a liquid asset. So keeping your money in an illiquid asset during times of hyperinflation and global recession sometimes means it's hard to liquidate. What's the minimum buy-in to become a shareholder? We had set the minimum buy-in during the last round at 50K, I believe. What's the minimum buy-in? 50,000 euro. Are you willing to sell all your XCM to keep CoinMetro going? Yes. I'd be stupid not to, because if CoinMetro stopped, my XCM is worthless. So why wouldn't I choose to sell it to keep the business running, which I own a lion's share of? It would be a very stupid decision. So yes, 100%. I would sell every XCM I have to keep the business running rather than sit on it and hope for a miracle, which is, you know, not a good decision to make in business. All right, guys. So we'll cut it there. Thank you very much, guys. I think it was a good AMA. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for keeping me up because I thought I was going to fall asleep halfway through this thing. Not because of you guys, but just because I'm tired. Have a good weekend. Spend time with friends and family. Don't look at prices. Buy some XCM. You know the drill. Tag me on Telegram if you have any other questions. I'll get by to answer them over the weekend. And hopefully you're someplace in the world with some decent weather. Weather here sucks. Maybe it'll get better over this weekend. I don't know. But if you are somewhere with some sunshine, put it in a bottle, stick it on a shelf, and send it over to us at some point because we're going to need it. All right, guys. Check in with you on Telegram. Cheers.